I have always been close to my grandmother. She was my mentor, my support, the person who believed in me more than anyone. When she got sick, I took care of her, spent every day with her. And my aunt? She hardly ever showed up. But when my grandmother died, she was the first one to break into her house. At the funeral, she stood there with a fake sad face, accepting condolences. A week later, she invited the whole family to the reading of her will. I didn't doubt it. My grandmother always said she wanted to leave me her entire fortune. She used to say, "You're the only one who cares about me. I know you won't let my years of labor go to waste." I was sure her last words weren't a lie, but I didn't know how devious my aunt could be. We gathered in the lawyer's office. My aunt sat next to me, her face serene. The lawyer opened the documents and began to read. All assets and property are bequeathed. I held my breath. To my daughter, Margaret. I felt my insides shatter. What? I jumped up. That's impossible. Grandmother would never do such a thing. But the lawyer remained calm. Here's the will. It's signed and authenticated. I clung to the edge of the table, feeling my anger boiling up inside me. My aunt. She took everything. She sat across from me, a slight smile on her lips. She thought she had won. But I wasn't going to give up so easily. I'm going to find out the truth and make her regret every second of her deception. I sat in the lawyer's office, unable to believe what I was hearing. My grandmother would never have left everything to my aunt. She hated her greed, her avarice. I knew something was wrong. But my aunt sat across from me, smiling contentedly. She thought I'd accept it, that I'd just walk away with my head down. But she was wrong. I stood up abruptly. I want to see the will. The lawyer raised his eyebrows, but silently handed me the documents. I ran my eyes greedily over the text. Grandma's signature was there. But something was wrong. I knew Grandma's handwriting. And this handwriting was different. "It's a fake," I breathed out. My aunt gave me a look of surprise. "What are you talking about?" I clutched the paper in my hands, feeling the anger boiling up inside me. "It's not her signature. You're crazy," she exclaimed, glaring at the lawyer. But her voice trembled. I saw the fear in her eyes. She didn't expect me to suspect anything right away. I threw the papers on the table. "I don't believe a word you said." She crossed her arms over her chest. "So what are you going to do?" I took a step forward, looking straight into her eyes. "I'm going to prove you're lying." She grinned. "Good luck, darling. The will is signed, witnessed and legal. You won't be able to prove anything." I gritted my teeth. "We'll see." I turned round and walked out of the office. She thought she'd won. She thought there was nothing I could do. But she made a huge mistake. She underestimated me. And now I'm going to smash her game to smithereens. I walked out of the lawyer's office, but the anger inside didn't subside. My aunt had tricked me. She had forged a will, taken all of my grandmother's inheritance, and now she thought I would just walk away and leave it at that. But she didn't know me. I wouldn't stop until I proved the truth. The first thing I decided to do was check my grandmother's original papers. I headed to her house, the same one that now belonged to me, or should have. But when I got to the door, I saw a new lock. I was no longer allowed into my own home. I gritted my teeth, walked around the house, and climbed in through the back window. Everything was exactly as Grandma had left it here. But something wasn't right. I looked around and saw papers scattered across the table. Old bills, letters, medical records. And among them, a black leather notebook. I knew it. It was my grandmother's diary. I opened it, turning the pages. She wrote everything down. And in one of the last entries, I saw words that made me go cold. "I don't trust Margaret. She keeps asking about the will. She says I have to sign everything over to her. But I don't want to do that. I know all she wants is money. If anything happens to me, let Clara, Gigi's name, know the truth is on her side." My heart sank. Grandma knew. She was afraid of her aunt. I took a photo of the page on my phone. Now I had my first clue. But that wasn't enough. I had to find the original will. And I knew where to start. I left the house the same way I came in, through the window. But this time, I noticed a security camera on the wall. It was new. My aunt had installed it knowing I was coming. And now she knew I'd already found something. My phone vibrated. The number was hidden. I picked it up. "You're making a mistake, Clara. came my aunt's voice. Back off before it's too late. I smiled. Too late for you, Auntie. I had already started. I dropped the call. She was afraid, which meant I was on the right track. I looked at my phone, the last digits of the hidden number still flashing on the display. My aunt was nervous. She hadn't expected me to start digging so quickly. But now she knew I wouldn't back down. And I had to move even faster. I went to the bank where my grandmother kept her papers. I needed to see if they had the original will. When I went inside, an employee approached me. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. My name is Clara. I'm Mary Williams' granddaughter. She passed away recently, and I need to check her safe deposit box. He frowned and quickly checked something in the system. Then he said the words that made my insides chill. The safe deposit box was cleared 2 days ago. I froze. What? Who took it? Margaret Williams. Your aunt? Anger flared inside me. She emptied the box before the will was read. She knew I'd start looking. But I wasn't going to give up. Did you still have copies of the documents that were stored there? The employee shook her head. No, but we have a list of the contents. He slid me a sheet. I ran my eyes over it. Old bank statements, shares, property certificates. And at the end, a will. But there was a note next to it. Revoked 2 months ago. Pending review. I clutched the paper. Grandma really wanted to change the will. She was going to rewrite it, but she hadn't had time. I took a deep breath, suppressing my rage. Now I had to find the lawyer who had worked with her at that moment. If he was alive and still had drafts or documents, I could prove that my aunt had forged the will. I got up and headed for the exit. But when I got outside, Auntie's car was already waiting for me at the bank entrance. I stopped, watching as she got out of the car and slowly approached me. Her face was calm. Too calm. You're doing this for nothing, Clara, she said coldly. I crossed my arms over my chest. Are you afraid I'll find proof? She smirked. I'm afraid for you, darling. Sometimes the truth can be dangerous. I looked into her eyes. I think you already realize you've lost. She nodded slowly. We'll see who makes the mistake first. She turned round and got into the car. The engine roared and she drove off. I didn't take my eyes off her. She was threatening me. But now I was even closer to the truth. And there was nothing she could do to stop me. I watched my aunt drive away, her car disappearing around the corner. She thought her threat would stop me. But it only encouraged me to keep going. I had to find my grandmother's lawyer, someone who could confirm that she was going to rewrite the will. If he still had the draft documents, I could prove my aunt had lied. I got in the car and opened my phone. I typed my grandmother's lawyer's name into the search engine. Robert Hale. Specializes in probate. But when I clicked on his profile, I got a chill inside. There was a note next to his name. Died a fortnight ago. I froze. A fortnight ago. Around the same time that Grandma's will had miraculously turned out to be in my aunt's favor. Coincidence? No. I don't believe in such coincidences. I did a quick check on his office address. The office was still open. That means someone inherited his business. And there might still be copies of his grandmother's will in his files. I didn't waste any time. I started the car and drove there. When I got to the office, I was greeted by a young lawyer. Hello, how can I help you? I'm looking for the files of my late lawyer, Robert Hale. He handled my grandmother's case, and I need to know if you still have any records. The guy nodded. Yeah, we still have archives of his cases. Give me a minute. I held my breath as he went into the back room. He returned a few minutes later with a folder in his hands. This is everything we have left on your grandmother's case. I opened the folder, and there I saw a draft of another will. I quickly skimmed through it. It clearly stated that all assets and accounts were to go to me. My grandmother was actually going to make changes, but she didn't have time. I found proof, but the joy lasted exactly 5 seconds, because suddenly the lawyer coughed awkwardly and said, By the way, your aunt came here a few days ago. I froze. Why? He sighed. She was trying to get all the papers on the case. I felt a chill run down my spine. She knew. She knew the truth was in here somewhere. But now I found it first. I looked at the lawyer and said calmly, I want to take these documents with me. He nodded. Sure. I tucked the papers into my bag. Now I had official proof that my aunt had forged the will. I thought that was the end of it. But when I left the office, I saw a black car parked across the road. There was an aunt sitting inside, and she was looking right at me. I saw her face contorted with rage. She knew what I'd found. And now she wouldn't stop. But neither will I. Now the war was for real. I stood on the pavement, clutching my documents in my hands. My aunt was sitting in the car across the street, her face contorted with anger. She realized I'd found the truth. But instead of driving away, she opened the door and got out. I gritted my teeth, not moving. She walked slowly towards me, her heels clacking loudly on the pavement. When she stopped, her voice was chillingly calm. "You're playing with fire, Clara." I grinned. "You say that like I have something to be afraid of." She tilted her head to the side, her smile strained. "Are you sure you realize what you've gotten yourself into?" I wasn't going to back down. I took a step forward, looking her straight in the eye. "I understand one thing. Grandma would never have left you her fortune. And now I can prove it." She squinted. "Do you really think this piece of paper is going to make a difference?" I leaned closer and whispered, "Oh, believe me, it will." Auntie pressed her lips together. She wasn't smiling anymore. She realized she was losing. But I knew she wouldn't stop so easily. "Let's make a deal," she said suddenly. I raised my eyebrows. "A deal? After you stole my inheritance?" She sighed, her voice softer. "Look, I can give you a good amount of money. Just forget the whole thing." I grinned. "You're offering me money for my silence?" She shrugged her shoulders. "Why waste time with courts and lawyers when you can just take the money and live in peace?" I gave her a hard look. "You're desperate, aren't you?" She tensed up. "No, I'm just offering you a way out." I took a step closer. "My way out is to get back what's mine." I pulled out my phone and took a close-up photo of her face. She frowned. "What are you doing?" "Capturing you trying to bribe me. Might be useful in court." I saw her go pale. She didn't expect me to go that far. But now she understood. "I'm not going to stop." She took a deep breath and said one last sentence before she walked away. "You're going to regret this, Clara." I crossed my arms across my chest. "We'll see which one of us regrets first." She turned round, got into her car and drove off. I stared after her and clutched the papers in my hands. I knew now that she would do anything to stop me. But I was ready, and I wasn't going to lose. I knew Auntie wouldn't give up, but I didn't expect her to go this far. The next day, I went to a lawyer to file the papers with the court. I had the evidence. I was ready. But when I got home, my flat had been broken into. I froze at the door. The lock was broken. Inside, everything was upside down. Cabinets open. Papers strewn across the floor. My things pulled out of drawers. Someone was looking for something. I already knew what. Papers. I rushed to the bag where I kept the papers. But they were there. She couldn't find them. But she tried. I took a few steps back, my breath hitching. And then, the phone rang. The number was hidden. I knew who it was. I pressed answer and I heard her voice. "You made a mistake, Clara." I gripped the phone tighter. "So did you? You think you can intimidate me?" She didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "If you go to court, you'll regret it." I felt a chill run down my spine. She was threatening me, but I wasn't going to give up. I would expose her. I'll get my inheritance back. And if she wants a war, I'll give it to her. I put the phone down on the table and took a deep breath. She had threatened me. She broke into my life, broke into my house, looked for documents, tried to scare me. But she couldn't find them, which meant she wouldn't stop. I knew I couldn't stay in the flat. If she did this, who knows what else she's capable of. I packed the most important things, hid the documents in a hidden pocket of my jacket and left. I didn't know if she was following me, but I knew one thing. I wasn't safe anymore. I decided to spend the night at a friend's house who worked at a law firm. When I told her everything, her eyes widened in horror. "Clara, you need to tell the police." I shook my head. "I have no proof it was her." "Bye." My friend bit her lip. "Then we have to be careful. If she'd already gotten to the point of threatening me, it was only going to get worse." I realized that, but I didn't expect how much worse it would get. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages. They were everywhere. Social media, phone, email. Every message was filthy, abusive, lying fraud. "Shame on you. Your grandmother would never want you to take her fortune." Everyone knows you're just a greedy bitch who wants easy money. I felt a lump in my throat. What is this? And then I saw the headlines on the internet. Greedy granddaughter wants to claim inheritance from family. Why doesn't Clara respect her grandmother's last will? Dirty games over inheritance. Who's right? My aunt. She launched a campaign against me. She launched a media war to ruin my reputation. Now everyone saw me as a monster. I closed my eyes and exhaled. She thought it would break me. But she made a mistake. She made this battle public, which meant I had another chance to prove the truth. She made the first move. Now it's my move. I sat in front of my phone, rereading the comments. My aunt had launched a campaign of lies against me. But that only meant one thing. She's panicking. She's afraid I'm gonna win. And now she's using the only thing she has left. Lies and manipulation. I couldn't just keep my mouth shut. I knew if I didn't respond now, public opinion would be on her side. So I did something she didn't expect. I went on the air. I opened up the camera and broadcast on social media. Thousands of people immediately connected. I looked into the lens and spoke honestly, directly. I wasn't going to comment publicly, but I have no choice. I'm being made out to be a greedy fraud, but the truth is, I'm my grandmother's only heir. The comments came in an avalanche. Prove it. Why would she leave everything to you? You're just greedy. I didn't get distracted. I calmly pulled out the documents and showed them to the camera. Here's a draft of the new will my grandmother's lawyer had drawn up. She wanted to give me her entire fortune, but she didn't have time to sign it. And here is evidence that my aunt forged her signature on the will that was read after her death. The comments changed dramatically. Wait, what? If that's true, then she really did steal the inheritance. Why aren't the police looking into this? I continued. You've all seen the articles my aunt is circulating. She wants to convince you that I'm a monster. But the real reason she's doing this is simple. She's afraid the truth will come out. And I promise you it will. I stopped the broadcast. My aunt thought she could use the press against me. But now I was using her weapon against her. And all I had to do was wait for her next move. I didn't wait long. An hour later I got a call from my lawyer. Clara, you won't believe what just happened. I clenched my teeth. What? He paused. And then he said, Your aunt is suing you. I smiled. She had made her last mistake. Now this battle would go to court, and there she can't hide from the truth. I held the phone in my hands, digesting the lawyer's words. My aunt was suing me. She took the riskiest step. Because now the case would go official. And that meant the truth would come out. What does she want? I asked. The lawyer sighed. She's accusing you of slander and trying to illegally contest the will. I laughed. She seriously thinks she can prove that? She's counting on the court to side with her because the will is already official. I gritted my teeth. She believed the system would protect her. But she forgot one thing. I'd already found proof of the forgery. And now I'm using her own move against her. What's next? I asked. We need to prepare. The hearing is set for next week. I nodded. A week. 7 days. That's all I have to make her defeat inevitable. I disconnected the call and immediately dialed my journalist friend. I need your help. What's wrong? My aunt wants to sue. I want everyone to know the truth. Do you want to tell your story? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I want her story to fall apart even before the trial. He was quiet for a second, then he said, Okay, give me a day. I'll set it up. The next day, a major publication published an article. High-profile scandal. Granddaughter fights over stolen inheritance. The court will decide who's right. The article went into detail about the evidence of forgery. My interview. Photos of documents. Grandma's diary. That was it. Now Auntie couldn't hide. Her clean reputation was destroyed. She would have to answer for it. All I had to do was wait for the trial and see how she would defend herself. The article blew up the internet. Now the whole country knew the truth. I saw the media start to bring up the topic of will forgery and inheritance fraud. Each new headline broke my aunt even more. Inheritance scandal, exposing fake wills. Court to sort it out. Is the truth on the granddaughter's side? What is Margaret Williams hiding? The aunt couldn't control it. She couldn't stop it. And then I got another call from the lawyer. Clara, your aunt has proposed to you. I squinted. What kind of offer? She wants to settle out of court. I chuckled. She realized she was losing. What's she offering? She's willing to give you part of the inheritance if you drop any further charges. I laughed. Part? Yeah. Half. I clutched the phone in my hands. She was still hoping to save herself. She still thought I'd say yes. But she was wrong. I took a deep breath and said confidently, "Tell her I'll meet her, but only in court." The lawyer fell silent. Then he exhaled and laughed softly. "I knew you'd say that." It was all settled now. I would go all the way, and she would lose everything. I stood in front of the courthouse, clutching the evidence folder in my hands. Today I would end this battle. I took a deep breath, feeling the determination boiling inside me. My aunt had hoped I would give up, but now she would know that I would never back down. When I entered the courtroom, my aunt was already sitting at the table with her lawyer. She looked confident, but I could see a shadow of fear in her eyes. She knew her lies were about to come crashing down. The judge took his seat and announced the start of the hearing. Annie's lawyer spoke first. He spoke loudly and convincingly. My client was simply carrying out her mother's will. The will has been signed and certified. This young woman just wants to contest it because of greed. I clenched my teeth. Greed. They were trying to paint me as a monster. But I was ready. When it was my time to speak, I stood up and looked calmly at the judge. "Your Honor, I would like to present evidence that the will submitted by the defendant was forged." I went to the table and laid out the original draft of the will in front of the judge. "This is a copy of the draft my grandmother made before she died. It says that the entire inheritance is to go to me." Then I got the signature examination. This is the handwriting expert's report. The signature on my aunt's will does not match my grandmother's handwriting. The judge ran his eyes over the documents. The silence in the room was sepulchral. I shifted my gaze to my aunt. Her face was pale. She hadn't expected me to present such strong evidence. The judge frowned and turned to my aunt's lawyer. "How will your client explain the discrepancies in the signatures?" He was confused. The aunt tried to remain calm, but her hands were shaking. She opened her mouth to say something, but she realized she had lost. I made the final blow. "Your Honor, my aunt also tried to bribe me, and when I refused, she organized a media attack against me and even broke into my flat to steal those documents." The judge looked at her with a cold stare. "These allegations are serious. We will schedule a further fraud trial." I could see the panic in my aunt's eyes. She was destroyed. She thought she could fool me, but now she had nowhere to run. The judge raised the gavel. "The court decides that the will is declared null and void. The entire estate passes to the rightful heir, Clara Williams." The gavel struck. I exhaled. I had won. I had regained what was mine. But it wasn't over. Now my aunt would be punished. I stood at the exit of the courtroom, feeling the tension gradually subside. I had won, but I knew it was only just beginning for my aunt. Now she was facing criminal proceedings for fraud. She'd lost everything. Her inheritance, money, her reputation, and most importantly, control. She was in the hands of the system now, and there was no escape. I was outside when I heard quick footsteps behind me. "Clara, wait!" I turned round. Auntie. Her hair was disheveled and her face was as pale as chalk. She no longer looked arrogant and confident. Now she looked defeated. "Please, Clara, let's talk." Her voice shook. I crossed my arms over my chest. "About what?" "About how you tried to steal my inheritance. Or how you broke into my flat." She grabbed my arm. "I made a mistake. I just wanted to." "You wanted to destroy me?" I yanked my hand away. She cried. "Clara, if you don't take the statement, I'll go to jail." I looked at her coldly. "You left me no choice." "But we're a family." She almost shouted. I grinned. "You only remembered that when you lost?" I could see that she was genuinely afraid. But I had no pity. She would never have felt sorry for me if things had turned out differently. She would have left me with nothing. I stepped closer and said quietly but firmly, "I gave you a chance when I came for the truth. You chose lies. You chose betrayal." She lowered her head, realizing that I wouldn't change my mind. "Please," her voice was barely audible. I took a deep breath and said the last words. "It's not my decision now. It's the law's decision now." I turned round and walked away. My aunt remained standing there, realizing that her life was over. She thought she could steal my fate, but But in the end, she lost hers. I walked out of the courthouse, taking a deep breath. I had won. But more importantly, I had got justice. I had proved to everyone that Auntie was a liar and a fraud. She tried to destroy me. But in the end, she destroyed herself. A week passed. I sat in my new house, the same one that had once belonged to my grandmother. Now it was mine again. I ran my hand across the wooden table where she had once sat, drinking tea and telling me stories of the past. I had reclaimed her legacy. But what warmed me most was the realization that I hadn't let the deception win. My aunt was awaiting trial. She was charged with fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of property. She tried to flee the country, but was stopped at the airport. Now she was facing real punishment. And this time, she had no choice. I picked up my grandmother's diary, which I found among her things. I opened the first page and read an old, familiar entry. I know I can trust my legacy to Clara. She's strong, smart, and would never betray her family. I smiled. Grandma had always known I could do it, and I had proven to her that I was worthy of her trust. I closed the diary, feeling calm. My name was restored. My life had come back to me. And my aunt, she got what she deserved. Now I could start over, free, strong, and confident that no one else could take away what was rightfully mine.